This is the AI in manufacturing boosting innovation and efficiency session. So if this isn't the one you were expecting to be in, you need to be out there following Steph's instructions and going up the stairs and turning left or right, as you can remember. So I'm Mike Biddle. I'm Exec Director for Net Zero at Innovate UK. And part of that portfolio is the things we make and use, the importance of manufacturing and materials to actually drive and grow our economy, indeed, to make it. So what we're here to do today is to bring together manufacturers of all sizes, each at different stage in their AI journey. Our speakers will share their practical experiences, challenges, and success stories, showing how AI is making a real difference in the manufacturing world today. There'll be plenty of time for questions. We will come to you. We'll start off with some panel sessions, and then we will be using the roving mics. So please be ready for that as we get there. And as we look to bring up our first speaker, before we'll start that, we're going to have a couple of quick polls. So we're going to try, if you can, so if you can use your phone, or other device, but I guess it's probably most likely your phone, and scan the QR code. So let's see if that comes up. Here we go, brilliant. Right, so we'd like you, if you scan that QR code, we'd like to ask you a question in terms of where are you and your organisation in your AI journey? The options are, we're waiting to see what others do first. We think there's something that's beneficial, but we haven't quite identified what yet. There's something we'd like to do, but we can't make the business case add up. We've got a program underway right now, and we've already adopted AI approaches, and it's adding value to our business. While you're doing that, I'll just introduce the panel. It's also giving us a bit of a clue as to how people are thinking. So we've got Andrew Kinder, who's Senior Vice President of Industry Strategy for Infor Discrete Manufacturing. We've got Rich Bovey, who's Chief for Data at And Digital. And we've got John Cook, who's Director at Group Atlantic, and Tom Hollands, who's Innovation and Technical Director for Rayner Foods. So we're going to have a few different views there. So it's quite interesting. We're kind of, actually, that's a bit of a split thing. So we're not just waiting to see, so that's good to see. And we will be looking at what we think there's something in it all the way through. Yeah, we're cracking on. Thanks very much. So that helps our panel. So our next question was then, what might be holding you back in your AI journey and doing more? So is that knowledge, such as there's confusion about AI and what it is? Is it about skills, money, time, or data? Indeed, possibly not fully understanding or trusting the data that you have. So what do we think? Okay, so there's a lot of knowledge there, which obviously skills, which is also coming up earlier, so that's a common thing. But it seems to be more on that knowledge bit. So I'll let our panelists do that. But before we start, so we'll start with Andrew in a minute, and then Rich, and then John and Tom. Just to give you a bit of a perspective from me as well, because why are Innovate UK interested in this? Well, we're here because we want to grow the economy, and we think that actually innovation in manufacturing, the opportunity for AI in manufacturing will drive that. And we shouldn't hide our light under a bushel, right? Innovation in manufacturing has meant we are consistently in the top 10 in the world. It's creating high-quality jobs for young and old, the ability to retrain. We can, despite all the uncertainties, look ahead with hope, not back with anger. And I think it is our chance to seize the day. And I think if we can work together and do use this session to listen to what our panelists are sharing, and then think about your questions you would like to ask at them, because they're helping people, they're out there doing it as well as you that are doing it already. And then hopefully we can have a good session. We will keep to time, I promise you that. But more importantly, you need to hear from them, not from me. So first of all, we'd like to come to Andrew, if you'd like to share a few thoughts.
Yes, thanks, Mike, and good morning, everybody. My name's Andrew Kinder. I work for one of the sponsors, Infor. We're a cloud provider, and of course we're right in the thick of this topic, really, because we've been developing, let's call them advanced technologies for manufacturers for several decades. The reason that we come to this event, and we've been sponsoring, you might recognize the name, we've been sponsoring the event now for more than a decade, is because our focus is on manufacturers. And you saw from the earlier poll, in fact, Robert Peston's poll earlier on, or was it Steph's, where about 50% of the audience put their hands up when they said they were using we said AI. I'm sure you just mean advanced technologies in general. We won't go into specific definitions about what type of AI. It's the 50% that didn't put their hands up that are of interest to me and I think this panel, because it is and we'll talk about this more today, it is a technology that's there for all. I mean, really, it's only mining something that you all own already, which is your data. And it's how to make the best use of that data for productivity, for efficiency, for customer service, or whatever. Now, because, if you just go to the next slide, because of our focus on manufacturing, we're intently interested in what manufacturers are doing with these technologies. Because it's not that they're not there, they've all been there for some time. It's what's the rate of adoption. And we did a very, very large study. It was 3,600 companies around the world across 7 industries. So it's a pretty extensive piece of research that we did. The results are available, so if you want to pick them up from the desk, you can. There's many questions we asked. But one of the ones that I thought was relevant for today's session is this one, which is we haven't got a problem of convincing manufacturers that technology is an amazing help. I mean, you're already making huge investments in physical automation, in robotics. It's the follow-on behind that data where the investment is still yet to go. So we know that this is not a problem of convincing that technology can help. It's more a problem of how to get started, how to overcome some of the things we saw on the earlier poll around knowledge and skills, and where to get started, because this is very much a target-rich environment that we're working in when we talk about AI. Now, Mike asked me to come along to the panel today and just share pragmatic stories from customers who are driving genuine value. So I'm going to use my introduction to just tell one story. It's a company which I think is sort of a mid-sized company. They're a European company. You may be using, oh, do you want to go to the next slide if this on? You may be using this company's products in your manufacturing or distribution facilities. It's called Conf. They make those multi-directional forklift trucks that run around. And importantly, they came to us not trying to do AI. That's kind of a key thing. They came to us with a business problem. And the business problem was very easy to understand. They have 60,000 varieties of these forklift trucks that they sell to 85 countries around the world. And every single one of them has its own unique service contract that goes with that. Can you imagine the complexity of servicing all those forklift trucks with the variety? There's no such thing as a standard kit of parts that you can send out. And the biggest problem, and those of you with service operations will understand this, it's the cost of the second time fix. If you can get it right first time, then that's good, and it's good for the customer. So they just came and said, look, how do we solve this business problem? It clearly is a great one for AI, because you're using vast amounts of data, their service records that they kept over the last 10 years. It's very good at pattern recognition. It's very good at predicting into the future. And we were able to kind of pull apart those service records and put together plans which equipped the engineers to go out first time and increase the first time fix, which lowers the cost and is the best thing to do for the customer because it keeps the forklift trucks moving. Now, there are 3 lessons for me that came out of this that we will unpack more as a panel. Number 1, it was a business project, not an AI project. It had nothing to do with technology. It was driven entirely by, I have this problem, how do I solve it? Number 2, they did it really quickly. This isn't like implementing, vast scale ERP applications. This is done in 6 to 12 weeks because it's using your data, and most of that time is on data understanding and data cleanliness. And number 3, and I think this is important, and we'll unpack this as well, they took their people with them. So it was the service engineers, it was the contract managers that defined the problem, that identified where the data was, and validated that the results coming back from the AI were at all believable, which meant that the less experienced engineers could service a contract and have the same efficacy as the more experienced engineers that they had in the organization. So 3 good lessons, and I think we'll talk about those and some more as we unpick some more stories through the panel. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Andrew. Brilliant. Over to you, John, if you would like to. Sorry, Rich. I apologise. Yes, so I've gone one line down on the thing, so that's good. So maybe we need an AI for a panel host. How's that? So Rich, please share your perspectives from And Digital.
Thanks very much. So Rich Bovey, Chief for Data at And Digital. We're the UK's biggest privately owned tech consulting firm. I run a data practice, and I've got a history in manufacturing, JLR and elsewhere. So normally I kind of start these things by talking about the incredible pace of AI. That feels sort of like it's been diminished by the pace of the geopolitics at the moment. I'm sure Robert Peston wouldn't be impressed by if I started by talking about the phenomenal pace of AI. It feels pedestrian compared to things that are going on in the world. But nevertheless, that we all recognize the benefits of AI. What does it take to be good at it? Because the truth is there will be winners and losers. And that's what I kind of want to focus on for a couple of minutes. How do we put ourselves in the camp of the winners? What will differentiate, as far as I see things, are two things. First of all, strategy. Actually, an organisation having clarity of thought about how it goes about its journey. I completely agree with your sentiments on how you tackle the problems. And also data. In a world in which many, not all, but many AI applications are essentially commoditized, data is of your own data is the differentiator and actually gives you a competitive advantage. So how do you use that? And for a small, medium-sized manufacturer based in the UK, that's a slightly terrifying thought, of course, those two things in combination, because those two things really are a reserve of perhaps larger organizations or tech natives. They have the funds to be able to experiment in order to refine strategy and choose where and where not to invest. And they have more data than smaller organizations and probably spend a bit of money on improving it. So that I think is a slightly frightening thought. What do you do about it? How do you overcome those barriers? That was exactly the question that I got asked by the West Midlands Combined Authority last year. Normally, my client base is mid-market size organisations from all sectors, but we collaborated with a combined authority to do something a little bit different, to diffuse some of the knowledge that we have from working elsewhere, working with a pilot of 8 manufacturers from the Midlands, based in Birmingham myself, and doing something a little bit different. So we designed a program, 12 weeks long, that worked not only with the practitioners in the business or potential practitioners, but senior execs as well. We developed a mini strategy for them. We helped them understand their use cases. We gave them access to expert coaches. It was essentially a diffusion of knowledge, but also we ended with a sort of hackathon, if you like, where we built a mini solution, an MVP, for each of the 8 organizations. And the results were really profound, right? We achieved sort of 4x return on investment. It was the combined authority that put the money in for it, but the 4x return on investment. But more than that, the organizations grew belief, they grew knowledge, and they felt like destiny was in their own hands rather than the gulf between them and others widening. So, I feel there is, despite the challenge ahead of us, I feel there is a formula for success. We would be happy to, I'd love to sort of open source the material and find a way to collaborate with others in order to expand the program, because thinking about the wider economic benefits of initiatives like this would really make a huge difference to the wider economy. So there we go. So I guess also I'm a data guy on the panel, and at some point need to say something about the data. I'll just finish with 3 quick things from my time. I built the Jaguar Land Rover's Data Centre of Excellence a few years ago. First one is not to think entirely about the tech when it comes to data. There's an enormous cultural change that needs to happen. During my time at JLR, we made the organisation £500 million worth of EBIT through initiatives with data. But the truth is the harder part, and what we're kind of most proud of in a way, is the cultural change that now allows them to go about doing that on a continuous basis. And that was blood, sweat and tears, that part. Starting with the problem, the use case, I'm not going to repeat what's been said already. In data quality, I have a slightly contrary opinion of data quality, where we could get very lost in a world where perhaps 40% of the data is wrong and 60% is right. We spend far too much energy on the 40% that is wrong, and I encourage us all to think about what we can do with what is there and the 60% that is right, because the value is there, we just need to go after it. So there we go. I hope a few little anecdotes that hopefully grow some confidence around what can be done practically.
Great, thanks, Rich. So, John, if you want to share some thoughts as well.
That's me.
Thank you. Did you want to come up, or are you all right?
I'm okay, I can stand here. So, absolute delight to be here today, invited to speak to you guys around our 12-year journey through, we'll call it AI, but it really started with data, much to Andrew's point there, and how we get data to be more anticipating and more predictive of what the future might look like, instead of using it as a rear-view mirror, which we had been for a number of years. So, next slide. I don't want to sound like it's a COVID speech, sorry.
Yes, okay.
So this is who we are. Group Atlantic own a whole myriad of companies across the world. I work for Ideal Heating. Some of you guys will have definitely heard of Ideal Heating. I'll go into that a little bit more later. So right back at the start, 12 years ago, we make gas boilers for domestic and commercial applications, and we needed to create data sets and data suites for traceability for the products we were installing in people's houses. It was part of the regulation and legislation of selling gas components in the UK. In time, we started to use that data to drive real-time actionable reports. So instead of having a daily meeting, we had exception reports that got fired through to even mobile devices, but we could see what was happening in real life on all of our dashboards across the shop floor. And then more recently, probably the last 3 years, we started to use artificial intelligence and algorithms to become more predictive using those same data suites. So it's kind of built up those building blocks over that same kind of time frame, but really the AI piece only in the last 2 to 3 years. Next slide, sorry. So one of the kind of key pieces, and it's been echoed a few times here today, is the pace of change within manufacturing that's only been further accelerated by the advent of AI, and what that represents to each of our businesses in isolation. So if we can improve our ability to predict, we can improve how we deploy our resources and utilise those resources for best benefit. In order to do that, really at the outset, you need to engage with the right services. We've got some great people here who I'm sure will be happy to speak to you on that, but right at the very start, we need to understand, where do we get the best bang for our buck? So we create that bow wave and that momentum, that sense of community that pulls people along the journey with us. So not dissimilar to how we all approached lean, back in the 80s and 90s. We needed to make sure that first Kaizen absolutely hit the mark and brought people together in that same bow wave. We need to adopt that same stance with AI, and we absolutely did. Next slide. In order to bring people on, we need to, exactly the same as we did in Kaizens and in lean principles and lean deployment, we need to celebrate the wins and communicate that outwards so that people move towards it, gravitate towards it. And again, we absolutely did that. There's an argument there that the rate of change that AI is going to evoke in manufacturing in particular is commensurate with the rate of change that we saw when the steam engine first hit industry way back. To combine with that rate of change, we need to emulate that with the rate of communication and the depth and frequency of communication that we impart into our businesses, and we absolutely did that also. There was a perception, we make boilers. Whenever I say I work for a boiler maker, all you guys will think dark satanic mills and cast iron and foundries, and you won't be thinking artificial intelligence and rapid deployment and agile development. Which is exactly where we are today. So how do you attract people who are outside of the industry and outside of manufacturing that our manufacturing footprint and its identity is changing as quickly as the technologies that are supporting it. That's an important key message to make sure that pipeline of skills is hitting our industry. Next one, please. So encouraging, I sound a bit like Albert Einstein there, his was slightly different, I just realised. Encourage your teams to be relentlessly curious. That there's such a huge landscape of AI apps that you couldn't do it from a single point. You need to bring all those guys together and get them to be really curious as to where do we deploy that tool in our business for best benefit. Instead of it being a scattergun approach, make sure that we keep it harnessed within scope. It's certainly more than ChatGPT, far more than ChatGPT, but it's a good starting point to have a play around and get inquisitive. So what's next for Group Atlantic and AI? This behind us, you'll have heard on the news that gas boilers are the latest pariah. Things are going to start to change towards decarbonised solutions, and we're right at the forefront of that. So developing air source heat pumps, hydrogen boilers is increasingly becoming our mainstay for the future. And this is our new technology centre. So inside there'll be 6 climatic chambers, an EMC chamber, loads and loads of technology that help us develop products in the UK for UK markets and UK domestic dwellings and commercial premises. Just a quick show of hands. Who has an ideal boiler in their house? It should be about 1 in 3 because we deliver 30% of the UK market. In terms of commercial premises, we represent about 40% of the UK market that we satisfy for commercial heating solutions. By 2030, there will be about 50% of you guys will put your hand up saying that you rely on a Group Atlantic or an ideal heating solution for your houses or properties. And that's thanks to the development work we're doing here. We're really protecting that differentiator and building on it further. Next. So, going beyond the AI deployment in research and development and how we're going to provide these new solutions for properties, there's not many parts of our business where we're not currently either deploying AI or we're well down the route to deploying AI in marketing, skills development, materials, both selection and design, and process optimization. Kind of the most important thing in that list there really is we're really having to start to get serious about AI for customers, just working quite latently in the background, silently doing its thing, but telling us what's happening in people's houses, how hard are our assets working on their behalf. Is there something that's slightly going to go wrong? Can we be predictive around that so that we're at the customer's door before they even realise there's a potential issue there where it's going to start to become unreliable in that 5, 10, 15-year horizon? Another thing it'll help us do is it'll dovetail into things like home energy management systems, so solar, batteries, even the national grid itself and how we redistribute power around the UK as we move away from gas boilers and we use electrified solutions. That's going to become key as part of that whole jigsaw puzzle that is how do we utilise the power in the country to satisfy the wants and needs, which is changing as quickly as AI has been introduced into manufacturing. So just to kind of recap, defining where you start is probably the most important thing. When you start, it's the old saying, when's the best time to plant a tree? Probably 20 years ago. If you didn't do it, the best time's probably today. That's no different to AI. However, it's more important that you select that first foray, that first focused, scoped out area where you're going to deploy AI, because that creates that sense of community and that bow wave of success that kind of predicates the rest of the journey. And last but not least, just before I hand over to Andrew Hollands, just one comment there. So there's a fear that AI is going to replace jobs and replace people. It won't, but companies that do adopt it quicker may. So just a note to leave you guys thinking about. And I'll hand you across to Andrew.
Great, thank you. So thanks very much. So Tom, if you'd like to...
Tom.
Hello everyone, my name's Tom Hollands. I'm the Innovation Technical Manager at Rainer Foods. Rainer Foods is a sandwich manufacturer based in sunny Chelmsford. We produce a fantastic range of food-to-go products, but we also have a nascent technology company. And I'm here to talk to you about one of the projects and three use cases of AIs that we had. So the project was called Smart People, Smart Process, Smart Factory. It was an Innovate UK funded project, £2.5 million. We had 4 partners, us, the lead organisation, Software Imaging. If you've never heard of Software Imaging, but you printed a document in the 90s or noughties, you probably used their printer drivers. We had the University of Cambridge, the IFM, and we had the University of Lincoln. And our project was to decarbonise our factory by 30% using digital technology. How did we do that? Well, we used this technology. At the heart is a real-time locational system. This creates a mesh throughout the whole entire enterprise. And anyone with a tag or a game link, you can geographically locate them. You can geographically locate assets, and you can create digital twins of processes. And the theory goes, if you can locate where people are, and you understand what they're working on, then you can gamify it, and you can create KPIs. And the KPIs that we generated was to decarbonise our factory. And we found out that whenever we decarbonise, we save costs. For every pound that we save, 20 pence of that goes in to fund the game. And as part of this, we had 3 AIs that we used. The first AI that we used generated insights in our refrigeration system. 80% of the energy that we use on site is spent keeping our factory nice and cold. And from some of those insights, we'd able to significantly reduce the amount of energy they're using across the enterprise by approximately 20%. Now, another AI use case we had, in the UK food industry, recalls and withdrawals account for 80%. Packaging errors account for 80% of the recalls and withdrawals that happen in our industry. These are very costly exercises. They generate a lot of emissions, they damage your brand, and in totality generates a lot of cost as well. Currently in the industry, we pay people to control this. We've got 5 quality advocates that go and check packaging to make sure the right products go in the right pack per shift. One of the use cases we had, we created an AI, and this allows us, through a system of inference, to identify if the wrong product has gone into the wrong pack, and also to check the durability date as well. In totality, this allows us to redeploy resources to quality functions rather than control functions as well. And the beauty of this AI, it doesn't take breaks, it doesn't need holidays, it's easy to train, and it's quite cost-effective and cheap as well. And we've deployed this along our skillet line. The skillets are those classic wedge sandwiches that you see, but we've also deployed it on the flow wrapper line and the salad production line as well. And this is a real thing that's happening in the factory at the moment, and this is helping us to decarbonise and reduce emissions. The third use case that we had is to detect slips, trips and falls. Again, done through machine learning. The most common accident that you have within food manufacturing is people slipping over, tripping over. Now this can take people out, literally. It can generate riddles, and it's actually also a costly exercise in itself. So who better? We got the health and safety team, as you can see, and we asked them to fall over lots and lots of times. No riddles were made in the gathering of this data set. And we trained the AI to detect slips, trips and falls. We integrated it with the real-time locational system, and so therefore we're able to generate push notifications and the locations, who the staff member was, and this has helped us to rapidly investigate and try and look for root cause as well. And we're also able to produce measles maps too. We found these AIs to be quite straightforward to deploy in quite a narrow area, and we've got plans to explore other types of AI throughout the rest of our facility as we go on. The technology that we've developed is now commercially available. We've launched UK national demonstrators, so if you want to go and see the gamification, if you want to go and see some of these AIs, then you're welcome to come and have a look around our factory and see them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to start us off, but I would like to come out for questions. So, and I've come up here, so it's easier to see from up here than down there. So we'll give that a go. But to start us off, could you all sort of share with me, I mean, I think it's fair to say we're believers. So with that in mind, where do you see the barriers to that faster adoption and doing more, and how do we overcome them? Maybe we start with you, Andrew, and then we'll come to Rich.
I think you saw from the poll earlier on that the biggest barrier to starting is more around knowledge and skills. So it's certainly not a technology barrier. I mean, these technologies have been around for a while. It's not even a cost barrier. I mean, there are some associated costs with it, but it's not prohibitive in relation to the value. So I think it's knowledge and skills, I think, is the biggest barrier. How you overcome that, I think there are roles for companies like yourselves, Innovate, to drive further education. There's roles for the catapult centres. As was said on the stage earlier on in the previous presentations around right the way back to schools and universities. But I think the biggest role is probably here in this room, because the skills are actually out there. I think about my own sons and daughters they're not in the AI industry by any means, but they practice and they use all sorts of freeware and open sourceware, and they astound me with the things that they do. But they're not practicing them in a manufacturing environment. They're practicing them in the roles that they're in. So if those skills exist, how do you attract them into your organisations and give them the freedom and the encouragement and the space to fail and the space to experiment, because that is the only way that I think you will overcome this. It's not something to be afraid of by any means, but there will be some failures along the way. But if you pilot quickly and learn from it, you'll progress quickly. And that for me is the biggest way we can overcome the skills and the knowledge challenge.
Rich?
Yeah, the data's there, right? 60-70% of data transformations fail because of data and AI transformations fail because of the cultural side of it. The digital skills gap has been spoken about for a long time. Mm-hmm. But I do think we need to recognise that the agenda is shifting. So perhaps 10 or 15 years ago, it was all about the supply side, right? We need Java developers, more Java developers coming out of universities and colleges, right? That's actually no longer necessarily the case, but balance isn't there. I actually think it's a demand side problem as much as it is a supply side problem now, where we need to increase the maturity and the ability of organizations to adopt the skills and help them in that process, kind of as I described earlier. One, sort of evidence of that challenge is in how we talk about AI itself. Now, we need to not turn this conversation into sort of very a deep technical sci-fi version of the commercial conversation that we're having. But the Inuits have 50 to 70 different ways of describing snow, right? From presumably sleets or heavy snow, but right. We still talk about AI as this sort of massive, great big blob, right? We need to, as business leaders, become familiar with the different nuances of it and become more literate in how we talk about it. And that's one of the things, as we become more accustomed through practice, that will make the biggest difference.
Brilliant, thanks. John, what are your reflections on barriers and?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a skills gap, and I think the pace of change is driving even more uncertainty in that. I was fortunate enough last year. I sat through an artificial intelligence in business program with Hull University. Highly recommend it. One slight caveat: it's a 12-week gap between each cohort, and in the 12 weeks since the previous cohort, the curriculum had changed by the tune of 50%. 50% of what we learnt 12 weeks later didn't even exist for the previous cohort to benefit from. It's changing at pace, and that can seem quite daunting. However, it's kind of just to play on a little bit what Andrew said there. As service providers move away from pro code and Java and Python and move more towards low code and no code solutions, that's to make it more accessible to everybody in this room. So don't be afraid to step in, even though it's changing every 12 weeks, because it's only becoming more accessible and easier with each iteration and each set of churn. But it did present a nervousness when we first embarked on deploying AI algorithms into our data 2 or 3 years ago. But that's no longer the case. So it's very accessible and not cost prohibitive.
All right. We'll come to Tom, but so I'm looking for hands as well then for if you do have questions, and we'll get a roving mic to you. We've got one there, so we'll go to number 2, but Tom, if you can share your thoughts on barriers first, and then we'll come to number 2 in a moment.
Yeah, sure. So in food manufacturing, and I think generally in manufacturing, seeing is believing. seeing some of the AIs being deployed on the factory floor, yeah, with warts and all, how it works, the costs, what benefit, disadvantages, the maintenance costs, the retraining that's needed. I think having a number of demonstrations around the country really helps to reveal that, and demonstrate to UK PLC that AI is a really strong, powerful tool. It can help generate efficiencies. Our world's burning at the moment. We are suffering from climate change, and we know that when we decarbonise, we generate savings as well. And so AI definitely has a place, and if we can see them being used in manufacturing, helps other manufacturers understand those benefits, and helps speed the way for quicker and swifter adoption.
Brilliant. Okay, I completely agree with that. So if you could share your name and where you come from as well as your question.
Yeah, my name's Jacob. I work for Crow UK. Stand out if you want to pop over to see us. I think there's a lot of emphasis on skills today, so I think this is quite an important question. So how do we mitigate the long-term risks of AI actually de-skilling our workforce through, over-reliance?
Andrew, would you like to start us off?
Do we want to mitigate it, or do we want to learn to embrace it? Because it's not going to go away, so I don't want to take the question as a defense. I'd rather take the question of how do we, like we've embraced every technology over the years, how do we embrace it and make it, and harness it and make it something useful? I mean, I think about one of the companies that I spoke to I mean, there is going to be some displacement, we know that. But I'm speaking to one of the customer service account managers. They did a project with us where, again, it was a very simple use of AI. It was to identify anomalies in customer ordering patterns, which that lady had to spend hours and hours of her time identifying manually. And we put AI to work to just simply do that in a few minutes at the start of each day so that she could spend her time doing other things. And her reaction when I spoke with her was not one of, oh, this is displacing my job. Her reaction was, thank goodness this is here, because I hated doing that job. And now it's there, and it's better, and I can go on to do exciting things. So there's a good degree of enhancement of people's quality of the work that they do. Notwithstanding that, the example that Steph gave earlier, which is very relevant, in some cases entire people can be displaced. So I don't have an answer for how we mitigate it, but I do have an answer to say that in the immediate terms, I think there's a good degree of embracing it and learning to live with it, and taking that quote that somebody way smarter than me said, humans won't be replaced by AI, but AI with humans will replace humans without AI. Which I think is probably where we are in the near term.
Rich, and then I think we've got John. Were you looking to come in, Rich? Sorry.
Yeah, look, agree certainly with all of that. Personally, I do, have everyone else presumably have those human concerns about displacement. But given the productivity gap that we have, which is a reality, we can't avoid embarking on this journey. We absolutely need to do so and accept the risks, because the risks of not doing so are obviously far greater. If I think about one of the small examples of the AI Adoption Accelerator program that I described earlier, it was to take CAD drawings and to turn them into a quote, right? It's kind of cool little mini case study that had a really good effect on the organisation, not because of that, but because of the time that was liberated so that people could focus on higher value activities. And I think we need to believe that there are lots of higher value activities that people want to spend their time doing. But I think we probably have a lot of the answers in this room, given manufacturing and engineering, the mindset, the endless curiosity, the focusing and ability to solve problems, that sort of quality of thought and problem solving, I do think needs to be more prominent in curriculums and education in order to make sure that we don't lose that sort of innate qualities of the human mind.
John, and I'm looking, I might have a question at the back, I think, coming in a minute. We'll see. I thought I saw a hand, but John, then we'll go to Tom.
Yeah, I think I'm going to use another lean acronym, really. You know, the TIMWOOD, the 7 deadly wastes: time, inventory, motion, waste, overproduction, overprocess, defects. That 8th deadly waste of untapped human potential. With AI in the mix within our businesses, that unlocks that for us really, really nicely. You know, there's always going to be a human in the loop, and to kind of echo what was just said there, you know, it'll only ever be about 80% right, maybe 90% at a push. But if you can get 5 days worth of work out of 1 day, that 4 days you've just released to find other things to drive more improvements into and make it really iterative and reiterative and a continuous cycle is the journey that we're all on. If you're not on that journey, somebody else absolutely will be.
Okay. Tom?
Yeah, I think in manufacturing there's a lot of exciting jobs and there are some very, very dull jobs. And I think AI can create bandwidth and allows those resources to be deployed to do more interesting added value jobs. You know, standing in a packaging room and counting out the packaging that goes to the line, weighing it and ticking boxes that it's very, very dull and it's very boring. And we've got lots of skills there that we can unlock and let them deploy, you know, to quality functions or lean roles. And that we don't want to be losing people, we want to be upskilling them. We do have an efficiency issue. We are generating a lot of inefficiency and a lot of waste. Why not generate some efficiencies and use those savings and invest in your workforce?
Okay. I've got a hand down the front now. Sorry, thank you. Oh, and then we've got one at the back there after. So we're sending people on a bit of a run around. But yeah, number 2.
Hi, you mentioned, Tom, about reduction in carbon emissions through the use of AI. What about the factor that AI itself creates quite a lot of carbon?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair comment. We've had to speculate on carbon to reduce carbon in terms of the technology that we've deployed and we've outlaid. There is concerns about some of the larger AI models out there, but I'm hopeful that as we become better and the technology becomes more refined, then they end up using less power and we'll end up generating better efficiencies on top of them. We get more out than what we put in. At least we've managed to rip out 330 tonnes of carbon from our enterprise through the work that we've done. But it's really important to say 95% of our emissions come from the supply chain, comes from primary production. Yeah? And the node where we are, we account for, 5% or so from the whole supply chain. A lot of our waste is generated from the bullwhip effect, which comes from the supply chain. And if you have an AI that can look and predict forward what the demand is from the supply chain, you can reduce that bullwhip effect really significantly. And that benefits everyone on the supply chain, including the consumer at the end. Some supply chains, such as potatoes, we're growing 500% more potatoes than what we actually need. And that's wasted emissions, wasted cost, wasted effort. So it's about the right deployment and trying to look at the whole of the supply chain. You know, the battles of tomorrow are not big co versus big co. It's going to be supply chain versus supply chain. I think AIs have a role to play in that.
Okay, thank you. We're going to come to the back. Anyone else from the panel want to pick up on that point?
That's a brilliant answer. No.
Great. Okay, number 1, please. Oh.
I work for a robotics company, so obviously physical automation. AI is a big buzzword, but we're not really seeing it, you know, programming robots yet. Have you any experience in that, and how do you see it affecting robots in the future and their application?
Anyone want to lead us off on robots and programming of those?
Yeah,
Go on, John.
I can a little bit. There's a number of companies working on prompt engineering versions of step file creation, which will absolutely play into the unleashing of more requirement for the assets that you manufacture today. One particular one's called ZooDev, fairly early stages, but through a prompt engineering app, you can create step files now. So you don't need to be a CAD/CAM guru expert. You know, it unlocks it for people who ordinarily might not be able to access those skills that were once required. There's not many industries it's not touching.
It's only a quick comment.
Andrew?
It's interesting I'd chat to you on it afterwards because I'm surprised that there isn't. I mean, given the use of AI in programming programs, you know, because we use it to generate programs, it's kind of surprising to me that it's not being used to program robotics. So maybe there's a new area there. Who knows? Yeah. But it's not something we have direct experience with on the robotics. But yes, on the programming, AI is used for accelerating programs.
Any further reflections? I think I saw a hand down the front at one point. Here we go. Yes, so if we could come down there as well, if that's okay. Number 2. If you could share your name and where you comes from, that'd be helpful.
Oh, it was you. That's nice, isn't it? Patrick Heskins from the British Aerosol Manufacturers Association. I'm fascinated with all the discussion about AI and certainly what's going on with trying to improve efficiencies in manufacturing. I think this is what was called back in the 1970s time and motion studies. There was a couple of things that were discussed today that made me a little bit uncomfortable. So, for example, I'm not really sure I want ideal boilers knowing when I take a shower and how long I shower for. And I'm not really, as a man recently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, I'm not really sure I want my employer to know how often I go and take a pee. So what is being done to protect personal privacy, and how are you controlling data security? Because having all of these cameras and these cobots and these robots and everything monitoring what everybody does lead you into a very dangerous area.
Okay. Rich, Chief of Data, can you share some perspective?
Feels like I need to step up to this. Couple of things, right? So stepping back and looking at the macros on the issue. In the US and China, the situation is very different to how it is in the UK and Europe in respect to the rules and regulations of around data and the use of AI. We need to be super clear on that. And you know, and there's been a lot of criticism of this, of the 2 global AI conferences hosted in Europe, summits hosted in Europe. Both have been focused on ethics and security. That is actually a real strength here, as opposed to elsewhere, right? Secondly, I think there is some interesting developments on the UK Smart Data Bill, where we will all, as citizens, be able to take greater control of our data in terms of how it's used, how it's shared between organisations, and how we can use that to, so, you know, sort of in the same way that we control our data through open banking, the extension of that is actually quite fascinating and really puts the consumer first, which is unusual sort of internationally. I feel like we have the potential to lead the way there. But there is no doubt that individual application of AI does threaten certain boundaries, and I do think that it is actually incumbent on all organisations, and I'm yet to find one who has appointed a chief AI ethics officer, but I expect that to emerge as a role in organisations in order to control and orchestrate and to demonstrate to customers that you're on the right side of that.
We had a lady over there with her hand. If we could move the mic round over number 1 over there, please. Anyone else want to come in on that? The importance of data?
I'd just like to answer the ideal boy. I don't mind when you're on the shower. But just to help kind of create a bit of context around that, because there has to be a compelling argument to change. And if the downside of that is he's going to know when I've had a shower, he's going to know how many times I've flushed the toilet. The compelling counter to that really is, it's a long time since all vehicles had to be taken for an annual service, and yet today we still have our gas boiler serviced every year, regardless of how hard it's worked or how many times it's been used. And there's a few reasons behind that. There's things that will start to develop issues even if they've not been using a gas boiler. Electrical systems are very different to that, similar to an EV. It's a long time since we had cars serviced every year. We now have runtime-based maintenance. If we know how hard an appliance has worked, especially an electrified product, an air source heat pump, we won't want to come and service that every year. It's no advantage to you whatsoever. In fact, you could over-maintain something. So if we can move more towards a runtime-based manufacturing or maintenance philosophy, that's got to save you a few quid, and you might not be as nervous about letting us know how often you've had a shower.
Yeah. I, for one, am very happy you addressed that head on. So, yes, please, number 1.
Hi, Laura Newbold-Breen. I'm CEO of Anti-Copying in Design, and we're a trade organisation supporting designers and manufacturers in the creative industries with intellectual property. I just wondered what your thoughts were on the recent AI and copyright consultation. Obviously, I'm sort of thinking in terms of design for manufacture, for example. If we've got companies here that are quoting and creating drawings that then could feasibly inform AI, and somebody else could make use of that. Do you have words of reassurance or any thoughts on that?
Good question. Who'd like to lead us off?
I don't have experience with that particular act, but I do have experience with what do you do when you expose things to external sources, and you have to have the controls. Going back to the gentleman's question. So I think it's becoming common policy now. It's certainly policy in our company. It may well be policy in your company that employees are not permitted to use the large language models, of which there are various, to submit your business questions to ChatGPT or whatever equivalent you're using. So instead, there's now the growth of internal-only versions of that. How many people have got an internal-only version of a ChatGPT? So about 20%. So for those 80% that don't know, they exist. So you go onto your own so that when you do want to use the power of large language models to pose a question, get results, you can do so, but confine that data so that it's not going out into the outside world, where the outside world can obviously take advantage of it, and it only enriches ChatGPT and makes it an even stronger engine next time around. So that's possibly one way that some of these things that can be controlled, i.e. take private versions of LLMs so that you can contain the results of the answers to your own organisation. But I'm sure there are many other ways in which you can offer some protection as well.
Rich, yeah?
Yeah, I don't think what I'm about to say is going to necessarily help you, but just to sympathise with the problem you're outlining. In the music industry, the degree of copyright legislation is so rigid and really heavily weighted towards the artist, the producer of the information, and yet in across the industries and the presumably you represent, it isn't as strong fundamentally, right? So despite the fact that copyright laws still exist, and whether it's been generated by AI or otherwise, you can still litigate. Fundamentally, the boundaries of that are not as strong. I think that we've got to look towards, bizarrely, the music industry in order to transfer some of their potentially legislation, but the process by which they administer and govern copyright.
Okay, helpful. Tom, John, any reflections?
Okay, good. This is as recently as yesterday, so it's literally hot off the press. There was a Garnet report got released yesterday morning. Well, I received it yesterday morning that speaks about a protocol called TRIS, which is Trust, Risk and Security. And by 2027, unless an AI model has TRIS protocols embedded in it, you won't be able to sell it. Won't be a thing. So that'll help protect the, defend against the concern that you just raised.
Okay, thank you. So is there one more question? If not, I've got one to help us bring... yes, we do number one. So we'll take your questions there and then we'll move things on from there. So go ahead.
Sure, thanks. Hi, Adam Marks from Willis. Outside of the data considerations that were spoken about a few minutes ago, what are the risk management considerations an organisation should think about if they're looking to utilise AI, or they are already looking or are already utilising AI, and how can those risk management considerations be addressed?
Tom, could you lead us off on that? You've been making this happen, so what have you done?
Yeah, I think it's important to keep your risk register up to date, isn't it? As you start altering your processes and that, you end up effectively displacing your risk, different areas, which is what you're getting at. I think you need to have a really good understanding of the tech and how it evolves. We don't have all the subject matter experts internally, so we have to collaborate, we have to tap into resources. A lot of those resources are in universities at the moment. And it's letting your systems adapt, mitigate those risks, and keeping the watchful brief as you're going. And when disasters do happen within the industry, treat them as near misses and jump onto it straight away, because you could be the next one.
Okay, that's helpful. Any further reflections, panel?
I'd only have one thing to add, and that's certainly I'm not advocating for the Wild West before you. I absolutely agree with all of that. But I also think your risk register, very near the top, I would presume, needs to have what happens if you don't experiment with AI, and the loss of competitive advantage, which arguably could be more profound than the risks you're able to manage by actually going on that journey.
Okay, brilliant. All right, so in that case, I've got one more question, and we've got one more poll as well, so we want your input as well before we finish. But Andrew, I'll start with you. As we start to wrap up, quick 30 seconds on what do you see as the key trends in AI and manufacturing over the next 5 to 10 years, or even the next 5 to 10 months for that matter?
There's a lot of technology trends that are still taking place, but I don't want to dive into those. But you'll hear of things called AI agents and various further dimensions of AI. You may have heard the CEO of Microsoft talking about how he believes that AI agents will displace even the applications that we use today. So he's very much out there thinking different visions. I think more near term, my expectation is that when I come back to this conference in a year's time, 90% of the hands go up when Steph McGovern asks how many people are experimenting with AI. That would be a positive step forward, because for me, like I said at the beginning, these are not new technologies, and yet representation of half the audience is not yet started on them. And it's not just AI, as one person said, I think it might be yourself, that said, it is AI. It's all the technologies like robotic process automation. It's all the technologies like process instrumentation and process intelligence. These things drive genuine benefit to your business for very little cost. It is just using the data that you already have, the processes you already have. If I did a poll, I'm pretty sure that you'd all say, if I've got 3 factories, one factory does process to pay 20% better than the other. Wouldn't you want to know why? Wouldn't you want to know at what stage the other factories are not doing as well? That is very easy to find from these sorts of technologies. So for me, what I'm looking for in the next 5 to 10 years is just less, 2 to 3 years, an accelerated adoption of what we've got, and then we'll let the CEO of Microsoft worry about where agents take us after that.
Okay. Rich?
Yeah, look, I don't know over what time frame this necessarily applies to, but I work with a number of organisations, and we're doing some pretty advanced stuff. We're working on some of the most sophisticated agentic stuff I think that's kind of out there right now. But what I really like is where it's simple, where it's accessible. I think that in 12 months' time, I've called it that, the greatest use of AI and the thing we will be enjoying the most as users of AI will be where it's embedded and knitted into existing processes and things that we do already. I'm not ashamed to admit that the piece of AI technology that I enjoy the most is Gemini. And that isn't because it is better than alternatives sort of LLM and suites from other organizations. It's because I use Google already and it's integrated into it. So integration and simplification is actually the key to making it accessible, furthering experimentation and increasing productivity.
Okay. Tom and then John?
Yeah, I think we're going to carry on, just to echo points colleagues have already made, I think we're going to carry on seeing more use cases come up across all the different industries that we have within the UK. I think within 5 years, it's very likely that people working in the office will have an AI assistant that does some of the drudgery work for them. I can see it being very common as a mobile phone is in the room now. And you can access AIs on your phone now anyway. But yeah, I think it will generate a lot of efficiencies, a lot of insights. And I think we're going to end up probably, through some of the insights, end up reconfiguring some of our supply chains and some of our systems when we're finding great efficiencies which benefit a lot of people, not just one node in the supply chain.
Okay, thank you. And John, and then we have our poll to finish.
I'm going to sound like a broken record because it is around accessibility for me as well. As we increase the availability of assets that have AI embedded straight out of the box, a lot of the vision systems now have machine learning already cooked into them. You don't need to program them. You just set a threshold and it learns itself within that threshold that you've deemed acceptable. Moving away from pro code, Java, Python, were the mainstays of yesterday. They won't be the mainstays of tomorrow. Lots of universities are removing Python from their curriculum. You can't go and learn it. Very soon you won't be able to go and learn it because it's not going to be required. And it's just getting it so it's at a level where people can move towards it, adopt it, embed it within their businesses without having too much consultative firepower around you going forward.
Brilliant. Okay, so in the spirit of real-time feedback now, so the panel, this runs again later in the next session. So we now would like your thoughts. So if we could come on to the final poll, which is, what are your thoughts about AI for manufacturing based on what you've heard in this panel? I'm still not convinced, and we'll wait to see what others do first. I get it now. I can see what we should be doing and who we should be working with. You've given me what I need to make the case for investment. I now know how I can build on the program we're doing or planning to do, and I'm keen to work with Make UK to show the value for AI and manufacturing. So I suppose it's encouraging there's still, unless that, well, maybe I shouldn't say this actually, because everyone dives in on that I'm still not convinced one, but that's good, right? So I suppose it is a journey for everyone, and I suppose that's the spirit of the Make UK conference as well, right? In terms of actually learning what's working for other people and learning how we can actually apply that to our own businesses and our day-to-day work. I'd like to thank the panel. I think they've shared their experiences of how this is happening in the real world right now and shared some thoughts with you. I'd like to thank you for this feedback, but also the questions in terms of making that an interactive session. I'd also like to thank Infor as well for sponsoring this session along with Innovate UK. And the next sessions that happen from now before lunch are a membership breakout session, which will be in this room, or there are further sessions on the 4th floor, which, and I've got two acronyms, which is the HRL or the AHS teams sessions, which are up, so I think that's the sort of health and safety piece upstairs. So if you would like to be thinking about the membership breakout session, that will be here. Otherwise, it's upstairs. So thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.